Well, for more on this story, we joined via Skype by Kashmiri political anthropologist from the University of Northern Colorado, Ather Zia. Ms. Zia, very good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, Independence Day ideally is a day of celebration and great happiness, as Prime Minister Khan alluded to. But then it is a day of sadness and frustration for the people of Pakistan. Do you want to take us through the latest developments?
Well, the latest developments, I want to talk about Kashmir. I want to talk about what this means for Kashmir, the 14th and 15th August, when India and Pakistan got their independence in 1947. At that time, Kashmir was fighting for their own independence. They had their own movement that was ongoing at that time. So Pakistan has always been an affective ally of Kashmiris. It has always been also an emotional and also has ended the struggle in Kashmir. As a result, and many Kashmiris also want to accede to Pakistan, and that sentiment still exists in Kashmir. The 14th August is not is celebrated as Pakistan Day and also as a matter of solidarity, as a matter of independence as well, but independence of Pakistan. At the same time, the 15th August is celebrated as a Black Day. So for Kashmiris, because they do not want to be with India. They have an anti-India sentiment that has been permeating the population since 1947, since India came into being.
Well, New Delhi revoked Article 370 of the Indian Constitution, essentially granting the Muslim-majority region considerable autonomy. Now, legally, who owns Kashmir?
Legally, who owns Kashmir right now? It's a very interesting question. I think it's a terrible question for Kashmiris because they want Kashmir to be owned by them. They want to have a sovereign nation. Majority of the people in Kashmir want to be independent. Many polls have proven that, and Kashmiri armed resistance has proven that. Although there is a faction that wants to accede to India, and there are pro-India collaborators who have held the government for the past 72 years, I want to say, since 1947, off and on, they have been ruling the Indian-administered Kashmir. So there is that sentiment that some people are pro-India, but majority of people want independence. So who owns India right now? Part of it is under the Pakistan's administration, which is also called the Azad Kashmir, that's a side of Kashmir which had already gained its independence in 1947 after fighting the British monarch. But when India and Pakistan fought over the region in 1947, a ceasefire line was drawn, and the one side of Kashmir comes under Pakistan's administration, and the other part is under Indian administration, which is currently de facto occupied. And of recent, when the revocation was done, many jurists and many legal analysts believe that this is a de jure occupation right now. So this entire area, this region, is one of the highest militarized zones, and this is a region which is under occupation right now. So who owns Kashmir? There is an imperialist hegemony in Kashmir that occurs right now, that is permeating right now. So there is a contested claim between the two countries. But at the same time, Kashmiris stand for sovereignty.
Now, speaking of India's revocation of the special status of Kashmir, does the state have, the right to frame its own laws, and essentially allowing people to buy property there, for instance?
So right now, the revocation that has been done of Article 370, what it means is that India has stripped the Indian-administered Kashmir of its special status. I'm sorry. And what that means for people is that, and the other thing that it has done is that it has also not just taken the special status away, they have also bifurcated the region into two zones. And not just that, they have also demoted the region from being a state to being a union territory, which is going to be directly governed by the central government, the Delhi government. And so what this revocation also means is that they have taken away one of the special clauses, which was the 35A, which protected the territorial sovereignty of the people. So when that goes away, Kashmiris are fearing the worst. They are fearing settler colonialism. They are fearing that there are going to be people who are going to be coming from India to institute, to start demographic changes, and not for the good of the society, but more so to Indianize Kashmir. So that is a great fear right now. How it plays out in future, we do not know yet. There are different kinds of reports coming out. One of the biggest things that is happening right now is there is a siege on Kashmir, and I think it's the 11th day of the siege. Curfew has not been lifted. People are allowed to move about to get supplies, but supplies are not enough. So there are reports of supplies being very low. Journalists are not being allowed to work. There have been mass arrests, and the curfew continues, the siege continues, the communication blockade continues. People are not able to use phones. People are not able to use the internet. There's no facilities, basically, and even the basic cable is suspended. So that is the situation right now.
I mean, Ather, you speak of a communication blackout, you speak of, the restriction of movement of people, but then the governor of Jammu and Kashmir, Satya Pal Malik, says restriction on freedom of movement will be eased after India's Independence Day on Thursday. What does this all mean?
Well, this means this has happened in the past, because this is not anything new that's happening in Kashmir. The only new thing that's happening right now is the total information blackout, because in previous sieges, when they have happened, when these kind of curfews and these kind of impediments have happened, people have been able to at least use landlines. People have been at least, even if the cell phone services were shut down, people would still have some basic facilities of internet or broadband. But this time around, everything is closed. Even the journalists are not able to work. So what Satyapal Malik is saying is that he's going to ease the basic restrictions. People are being allowed to move, to kind of let off the steam. People have been there during the Eid al-Adha, which was the holy festival that people were celebrating this past week. People have been allowed a little bit of movement here and there to get supplies. So it remains to be seen what kind of movement is going to be eased. But it also remains to be seen what kind of response people will be having to the revocation once they are allowed to move out freely. And that's something we all fear, because there is going to be enormous reaction.
Prime Minister Khan's denunciation of neighboring India, I mean, will this maybe increase the risk of war?
There's always the risk of war, but both are nuclear nations. So I'm hoping that some form of sanity permeates, because there's not going to be any winners in such a war. So considering what Prime Minister Khan is doing right now, he's trying every possible measure to drill some sense into the Indian government. And because Kashmiris look towards Pakistan, they have this affective relation, and that should be seen in a historical context. India likes to use it as thinking only about Pakistan as a proxy war partner, but that's not the case. There is a lot of history to the relationship between Pakistani people and Kashmiri people, who before 1947, the huge swath of the entire region was one region, was one culture in a way. They shared a lot of cultural ties, religious ties were huge. So what is happening right now, yes, war clouds are looming large. There is already on the line of control, there is some fighting and belligerence going on. So we will see heightened tensions. We will see intensification of militarization that has already happened. More troops have been flown into Kashmir, plus the 700,000 soldiers already in the region. So we are going to be seeing that kind of belligerence, or those belligerent acts, increasing. At the same time, I'm hopeful that it doesn't come to a nuclear standoff.
And a lot of analysts have been saying that this is just an exercise in public diplomacy. And having said that, does Islamabad have international sympathy or international support? And what kind of strategic options are at their disposal?
Well, I think the question whether Islamabad has international support, it kind of, to me as a Kashmiri, seems very, what should I say? It seems like there's a lot of history that we need to look at. I would rephrase the question and say, do Kashmiri people have enough support? Because there are more than 70,000 people who have died, who have been killed, both combatants and non-combatants, in this conflict. There are massive human rights abuses. Rape has been used as a weapon of war. And the siege that we see right now, it's the Kashmiris who are doing the dying in this conflict. So the question should also be that is the world sympathy, is world listening to Kashmiris, and how do we listen to Kashmiris? I think that's something that the world powers, especially the United Nations, with whom Kashmiris have always attached their goodwill. Kashmiris have always looked towards the United Nations. So I feel that's also a part of the question, rather than just thinking what these big nations in the subcontinent are thinking about and how they can be supported. So whether Pakistan has a genuine leg to stand on, I do think it does, because in 1972, India and Pakistan went into this agreement, and that agreement is something that both of them were upholding in some measure, and that talked about not having any unilateral decision on the region. And now India has gone ahead and it has gone against that truce that was drawn at that time. So they have gone ahead and they have taken a decision on the Indian administered Kashmir. So I do think there is a genuine case there that Pakistan can leverage. But at the same time, I think the world community should be asking a question about Kashmiris as well, and seeking to redress the Kashmiri question rather than the India-Pakistan question.
Ather Zia, we thank you for your time and for your analysis. We appreciate it. That was Kashmiri political anthropologist from the University of Northern Colorado, Ather Zia.